The email arrived at exactly 8:03 a.m., 3 minutes after Daniel had slipped into his chair, breathless, tie crooked, eyes still carrying the exhaustion of a night that had barely allowed him to sleep. Subject: immediate termination. For a moment, the office around him blurred, the hum of keyboards, the faint aroma of coffee, the distant chatter of colleagues who had long stopped noticing his quiet struggle. His fingers hovered over the mouse, trembling, as if refusing to confirm what his heart already knew. Click. Due to repeated tardiness and failure to meet punctuality standards. Daniel didn't read the rest. He didn't need to. The words struck like a hammer against everything he had been holding together, his dignity, his routine, his fragile hope. Around him, no one looked up. No one noticed that a man's world had just cracked open in silence. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. Late again. Always late. If only they knew. But they didn't. And maybe that was his fault. Because Daniel had never been the kind of man who explained himself. 2 floors above, in a glass-walled office that overlooked the city skyline, CEO Adrian Clark adjusted his cufflinks with practiced precision. To him, punctuality wasn't just a rule, it was a principle. Discipline built companies. Discipline built success. And Daniel had broken that rule too many times. Consistency matters, Adrian had told HR the day before. If we start making exceptions, we lose structure. He hadn't hesitated when signing the termination. He didn't know Daniel. Didn't need to. Or so he thought. Daniel packed his desk slowly. A worn notebook. A coffee mug with a chipped handle. A small framed photo. He paused at the photo. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, missing her front tooth, grinning at the camera with reckless joy. Her arms wrapped around Daniel's neck, her cheek pressed against his. "Emma," he whispered. The ache in his chest deepened. "Hey, man," a coworker muttered awkwardly, lingering nearby. "That sucks." Daniel nodded, offering a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's okay." But it wasn't. Because this job wasn't just a job. It was everything. That evening, long after the office had emptied and the city lights flickered to life, Adrian found himself still at his desk. A deal was on the verge of collapse, numbers weren't aligning, and his mind refused to settle. Frustrated, he loosened his tie and decided to step out. The parking garage echoed with the hollow sound of his footsteps. And then he saw him. Daniel, not in a suit anymore, but in worn jeans and a faded jacket, standing beside an old van with peeling paint. The back doors were open, revealing something unexpected. Blankets, medical supplies, and a small folding bed. Adrian slowed, curiosity overtaking him. Daniel wasn't alone. A little girl sat inside the van, bundled in a blanket, her face pale but her eyes bright when she saw him. "Daddy," she chirped. Daniel's face transformed instantly, the exhaustion melting into warmth. "Hey, princess, I got your favorite." He handed her a small paper bag. She opened it eagerly. Fries. Adrian watched, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. He shouldn't have stayed, but he did. "Did you finish your drawing?" Daniel asked gently. The girl nodded, holding up a crayon masterpiece. "It's us." Daniel leaned in like it was the most important artwork in the world. "It's perfect. Miss Sarah said I'm getting better," she added proudly. "That's because you're strong," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Adrian noticed then how thin she looked. How fragile. "What did the doctor say today?" Daniel asked carefully. The girl hesitated. "Same stuff." Daniel nodded, masking the worry in his eyes. "We'll get through it. We always do." He kissed her forehead, and in that quiet moment, Adrian felt something shift. This wasn't a man who didn't care about time. This was a man fighting battles no one could see. The next night, Adrian came back. He didn't plan to, but something about that moment lingered in his mind, refusing to let go. Again, Daniel was there. This time, kneeling beside the van, fixing something under the dim light of a flickering bulb. Adrian approached slowly. "Your van?" he asked. Daniel looked up, startled. For a second, recognition flashed across his face, followed by discomfort. "Yeah," he said cautiously. Adrian nodded. "It looks well used." Daniel chuckled softly. "That's one way to put it." There was an awkward silence. Adrian wasn't used to this. Not used to standing in parking garages, making small talk with employees he had just fired. But something compelled him to stay. "You're here every night," Adrian said. Daniel stiffened slightly. "Sometimes." "Why?" The question hung in the air, heavy and direct. Daniel studied him for a moment, as if deciding whether to answer. Then he sighed. My daughter has treatments nearby, he said quietly. We can't afford to stay in the hospital all the time, so we make do. Adrian felt the weight of those words settle deep. You live here, temporarily, Daniel replied, until things get better. And your job? Daniel gave a small, bitter smile. Guess that part doesn't matter anymore. The words hit harder than Adrian expected. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. The image of Daniel and his daughter replayed in his mind, over and over. He thought about the termination letter. About punctuality standards. About consistency. And for the first time in a long time, those words felt hollow. The next morning, Daniel wasn't there. His desk sat empty, his presence erased like he had never existed. But Adrian knew better now. And he couldn't ignore it anymore. Days passed. Adrian found himself distracted, unsettled. Until one evening, he returned to the garage again. The van was still there. But something was wrong. The doors were closed, and there was no laughter. Adrian approached quickly. Daniel, he called. No response. He knocked. The door creaked open. Inside, the girl lay still, her breathing shallow. Daniel sat beside her, his face drawn with fear. I think she's getting worse, he whispered. Adrian's chest tightened. Why didn't you take her to the hospital? Daniel's eyes flickered with something raw. Because I can't afford it anymore. The words landed like a blow. In that moment, everything became clear. All the late mornings, all the silent struggles, all the things Adrian had never bothered to ask. Get her, Adrian said firmly. Daniel blinked. What? Get her. We're going. There was no hesitation in his voice this time. No corporate distance. Just urgency. Hours later, in the sterile brightness of a hospital room, Emma slept peacefully under proper care. Daniel sat beside her, overwhelmed. I don't know how to thank you, he said. Adrian shook his head. You don't. There was a pause. I made a mistake, Adrian admitted quietly. Daniel looked at him, surprised. I saw an employee who was late, Adrian continued. I didn't see a father doing everything he could to survive. Daniel swallowed, emotion rising in his chest. I should have asked, Adrian said. I should have listened. For a man like him, those words weren't easy. But they were real. Weeks later, Daniel walked back into the office. Not as someone begging for a second chance. But as someone who had been seen, understood, respected. His position had been reinstated, with flexibility, support, and something he had never expected from a workplace. Compassion. Emma's treatment was being covered. The van was gone. And, for the first time in a long time, Daniel wasn't just surviving. He was living. As for Adrian, something had changed in him too. He still believed in discipline. Still believed in structure. But now, he understood something deeper. Behind every late arrival, every missed deadline, every quiet struggle, there might be a story. A reason. A human being fighting battles you can't see. And sometimes, the strongest leaders aren't the ones who enforce the rules without question, but the ones who dare to look beyond them. Because in the end, success isn't just measured in profits or performance. It's measured in the lives you choose to understand, in the moments you decide to care.